Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio as we continue to celebrate all the amazing people who are making this place, Mississippi, such a great place to live, work, and play. Kurt Allen from the Mississippi Aquarium is going to be coming up in the second half of the show. Before we go to Jeff Duncan, just wanted to share with you, I walked outside this morning. It's such a beautiful sunrise. Took a few pictures and posted it. And when I post that on my personal Facebook page, lots of my friends chime in. We have some of the most beautiful sunsets and sunrises in coastal Mississippi in the world, really. But as I looked out over this sunrise this morning, I couldn't help but think about the fact that Ann and me, my wife and I, are having to head to Birmingham. One of my beloved cousins died unexpectedly this past week, and so we're going to go celebrate her life. But as you look out over Back Bay and see the sun rising, you think about how cherished life is. I came back into the house. I have these set of things I do every morning. One of the things I read is this digital history book that comes in, and it just so happens that one of the items in the digital history book was this: Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrates on re-entry. All 7 astronauts were killed back in 2003. And the quote for the day was this: life is a magical thing. Life is a magical thing. And that was actually said by Laura Clark, who is an astronaut and a medical doctor who was actually aboard the Space Shuttle Columbia. You just never know. You never know when that moment is coming. But life is a magical thing, and you should appreciate it with everything you've got every single day. We talk about it on the show all the time, live in the moment. But we don't have to look far, none of us do, to be reminded about how important that really is. With that said, let me move over now to my friend Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. I look back at my time in New Orleans, and one of the many things, I had the privilege of working with so many incredible journalists there. Among them was Jeff Duncan, and I've been thrilled that he and I have continued to communicate through this show. So we're lucky to have him. He's on the NFL Hall of Fame selection committee. He's very awarded as a journalist and as a columnist, and he's here with us every single Friday. Jeff, how you doing, my friend?
Doing good, Ricky. Your intro there reminds me of something that Steve Gleason says a lot. When he was diagnosed with ALS, he was given basically 2 to 3 years to live, and he was given a timeline. And what he always says is, we all have a timeline, but we just don't live like that. And I think that's totally true in this instance. I mean, we don't know what our timeline is, so we act like it's going to go on forever. And I think it's a lesson for all of us to, live each day to its fullest.
We all have a timeline. We just don't live like we know it. Is that the way he said it?
Yeah, we all have a timeline. We just don't live like we have one.
Yeah, that's so powerful. It really is. Wow. But anyway, yeah, we're headed to Birmingham, and we get to celebrate her life. She's such a large family, so many kids and grandkids, and I was born in Birmingham, so when my dad, who was a traveling salesman, went to Pensacola, Mobile, then Pensacola, then here. I was here by the time I was 4 years old, so I consider myself a Mississippi native. But obviously, we have very much kept in touch with that part of the family. And when my father died back in 1979, my Uncle Harold, he has 3 brothers, and they were all terrific, but my Uncle Harold sort of became the grandfather for my kids. And so we went to visit that family 2 or 3 times a year. And then his son Harold was the best man in my wedding, and his wife Debbie is the one who just recently passed away. So it hits very close to home. She was someone who truly appreciated God's grace. We shouldn't worry about her now. And she has, the entire family has a tremendous Christian base to be able to draw on, but that's not going to help them in this moment as they contemplate the loss and living without Debbie. So we're going to go up there and offer our condolences and our hugs, that's for sure. Let's shift gears, buddy. It's been interesting. A lot of things going on. We're headed toward the Super Bowl, lots of activities around that. I think it's going to be a great Super Bowl. We've had the Senior Bowl that's happening over in Mobile right now. The Saints are looking for an offensive coordinator. There's a lot going on, man. So how things going in your world?
Yeah, it's slowed down a little bit, which is good. Always welcome that kind of time to exhale after the season, and then it ramps up pretty quickly in the NFL, as you know. I mean, the league year starts in early March, and that starts with free agency, and then it rolls right into the draft, and next thing you know, we're at training camp. So I usually try to take a little downtime at this period, especially between the Super Bowl and NFC Championship games, and then just kind of get refocused for the long run. I mean, right now over in Mobile, the Saints, because of the close proximity, they're one of the few teams. I mean, they've got their entire scouting and coaching staffs over there. More and more teams, Ricky, are not sending their full staffs over there. It used to be you'd send everybody. It was almost like a NFL offseason convention. And you went out to a restaurant or a bar in Mobile. You know, it's not a very big little downtown area. You'd run into, you know, NFL head coach or Jerry Jones or somebody. It was always a lot of fun. It's not quite as crazy as it used to be.
Yeah, I still see, you know, I follow it closely because as a former publisher of the Mobile newspaper, you know, we were a big sponsor of the Senior Bowl. And I've mentioned on the show many times that the Senior Bowl is kind of, there was a point where they wondered if it would continue, but obviously they got through that hurdle. And the way that the city embraces it now that it's at the new stadium at the University of South Alabama, it's incredible. I mean, as you point, it's kind of like a mini Super Bowl because you got all these activities that are happening off to the side, and certainly not the parties that we came to appreciate in New Orleans when New Orleans hosted the Super Bowl. But you get it. There's a lot of activities. They want to roll out the red carpet for not just the coaches and scouts and personnel that are coming in town, but also for the players. In fact, interesting, I have a conversation coming up with Wendy Sweatman. He's from Biloxi. He owns Sweatman Security, and they're actually the security service for the University of South Alabama Stadium. So when we did the pre-recording of the show, he was there, and boy, this flurry of activity going on behind him. But it's still seen as a place where you might be able to find a gym or two, and the Saints have had some luck doing that, haven't they?
Well, they put a lot of emphasis on it because they get great access to the players. It's a chance for them. And Jeff Ireland talked about that this week, chance for them to really kind of peel back the onion, the different layers, and get to know the person behind the film that they see of the player. So it's really kind of all the draft process kind of starts for them right now. And the scouts, of course, have been grinding away for months, going to games, evaluating prospects. This is really the first time the coaches get players' names on their radar. I mean, they've been playing a football season and game planning each week. So they don't know who Caleb Williams is from somebody else, you know, and this is their first time to kind of figure out who might be available in the draft and start to evaluate these prospects.
Well, look, you've helped us understand that the Saints personnel department is one of the best and led by Jeff Ireland. But most recently, Cody Rager went to the Broncos. That was a big loss, especially given the thought that there's at least some discussion about Jeff Ireland maybe headed, you know, somewhere to the West Coast. You said before we started the show you don't think we're going to lose Jeff Ireland, which is a good thing. And by the way, y'all had a headline that said Saints, Jeff Ireland, Saints are not throwing up the white flag. Excuse me, I'm blowing that. Saints are not throwing up the white towel after Broncos poach Cody Rager. Yeah. What's your read on all that?
Well, look, I mean, let's face it. There's a little friendly competition between former Saints head coach Sean Payton and the Saints organization, right? I mean, he's taken some of their best coaches and personnel executives away, and I'm sure Mickey Loomis and his crew are not happy about that. But they know that's how Sean Payton's wired, man. I mean, he's one of these guys. I mean, all's fair in love and war for him, and he's going to try and get the best and brightest. And Cody Rager is one of those guys. I mean, very talented evaluator. He was Jeff Ireland's right-hand man, kind of his protege, worked with him for years. And with Jeff Ireland interviewing with the Chargers earlier this offseason, there was a chance he might go and become the general manager of the Chargers. They elected to hire someone else. So Jeff Ireland's going to be on board unless something crazy happens with another team. So I think Cody Rager's looking for an opportunity, and it's a great opportunity. I think someone told me in the organization he doubled or tripled his salary. He's a young guy, just getting married. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Hey, you know, it's interesting. We've talked about this, and we won't go through the whole cadre of names here, but The reality is the Saints have done a really good job of developing front office people and coaches that are performing really well all across the NFL right now, haven't they?
Yeah, and you have to give credit to Mickey Loomis. That's one of his strengths as an executive. We see Terry Fontenot in Atlanta, and Kai Harley's obviously been interviewing around the league, Jeff Ireland. It's one of, I think, Mickey's greatest strengths is allowing and empowering his executives below him. And they've got a bunch of other ones in line, too. I mean, Mike Parrington, their director of pro personnel, I think we'll start hearing his name around the league soon for general manager positions. There's a lot of talent out there. And when that happens, you have to compete. It's a very competitive environment they're in.
Well, Pete Carmichael's headed to Denver. I was wondering, what does that make now that have gone to Denver? You guys actually have a tracker you started. It's a long list of players and others, either, formerly with the team or directly from the team that are now in Denver. It's kind of fascinating to watch that. But like you said, this is war. They're going to take advantage of the opportunities they can get. Hey, when we get back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with Jeff Duncan. See you after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. I have my friend Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times Picayune. Man, we got a lot to talk about in this segment that we have here. I want to get his thoughts on who he thinks is going to win the Super Bowl, and there's lots of other things to talk about. But hey, before we get too far away from Denver, question for you: one of the many names that are on the list that used to be with the Saints that are now with Denver. One of those is Will Lutz, the former kicker for the Saints. You think they regret not keeping him?
Well, look, I think Blake Grupe had some growing pains, but I think they're pretty confident in him. He had a solid rookie year. I wouldn't say a great one, but I think they feel like this is a guy that could be their kicker for the next several years. And, yeah, he did struggle a little bit, especially on the couple of short kicks he missed. But I think they're okay with it. His kickoffs were among the best in the league. Will Lutz had a fine year with Denver. I think they're both quality NFL kickers. I don't think there's a huge difference between the two, to be honest with you.
Listen, you and I have talked about this before. It's by now relatively well documented that Michael Thomas is volatile. And he had a period of time when they were able to sort of get him in a space where he wasn't being disruptive. He gets injured. He goes to Twitter. He deletes Twitters. He deletes tweets. He's back to Twitter again. But one of the interesting points is that I don't think he would be throwing our quarterback under the bus the way he is, Derek Carr, if he didn't think that he wasn't going to be with the Saints next year. And the other thing, you, Jeff Duncan, seem to be inside Michael Thomas's head. How are you doing in there?
Look, man, Mike Thomas is a unique, complicated person. I think we all know that. I mean, he's a terrific receiver, a guy that was on a Hall of Fame trajectory. Ricky, I mean, he was putting up numbers, unprecedented numbers. And then his career really, got derailed by injuries. And we've seen now 4 seasons where he's had injuries. And I think he's just been frustrated. And I understand that. I mean, he basically signed a team-friendly, incentive-laden deal to come back to New Orleans, and he needed a big year for his career, for his legacy, and it didn't pan out, right? He got hurt again. His numbers weren't that good, and I think he's just been frustrated and probably vented a little bit. And knowing Mike Thomas, he'll be a different guy tomorrow than he was yesterday, and then he's just kind of all over the place sometimes. That's the Mike Thomas experience. But there's no question he can continue to play in the NFL. I just don't think it's going to be with the New Orleans Saints going forward.
Okay, but tell listeners how you got in his head.
Well, look, I've written some things that he thinks is very critical of him. I mean, it's my job as a columnist. I mean, my job is to, kind of give my take on things. And Mike Thomas is a very prideful guy. And so I think he's hypersensitive to that stuff. And look, he reads everything. He's one of these guys. Certain players, you can write something critical and they don't even see it. It's not even part of their daily routine. Mike Thomas is on social media 24/7. He's one of those guys. So he sees everything and takes everything very personal. And, he's taken some of the columns that I've written, but mainly stuff written about things that were well documented. I mean, he got suspended by the head coach, missed a game. When I've always said, Ricky, what goes on in a player's personal life, I never write about until it crosses over into their professional career. So when you do something off the field, like he had this year, an incident off the field, and it affects him on the field and in the locker room, then it's fair game. And that's stuff that I think he's probably not too happy with, but it's part of the business.
It is definitely part of the business. In this mode of wanting to, change the culture or solidify the culture, however the Saints are talking about it, when you've got a guy that's out there tweeting what he's tweeting, he's not a good fit when you're in the process of trying to button up the culture. Do you think? Well,
yeah, that's a good point. And I think the problem that Dennis Allen's got right now, and Mickey Loomis and the brain trust out there, is they're trying to get everybody rowing in the boat with the same effort in the same direction. And when you've got people that aren't, you've got to make a decision. Can we get them back in the boat rowing with us? Or if not, then we've got to move on. I think that's part of this offseason evaluation they're going to be doing. And look, I think Mike Thomas is complicated because, he had an incentive-laden deal, so he needed to put up numbers. He needed yards and catches to earn some of the incentives. He was making top wide receiver money for a long time, and then the injuries caused them to have to rework his deal, and he lost millions and millions of dollars because of that. So it's a complicated situation, and so I understand his frustration, but you can't throw your starting quarterback under the bus, especially one that was brought in to be the leader of the team by the head coach, who's under fire right now and trying to win and save his job. He knows this is a big year. So obviously that probably sealed his fate here in New Orleans.
I think it may have, especially when you consider culture and leadership and all of that. Got a really good Super Bowl coming up. I mean, it's there's so many sub stories. It's crazy. But what do you expect?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an incredible game. I mean, rematch, right, of a Super Bowl a few years back. I think it's San Francisco's time. It's Kyle Shanahan's time. Exercise those demons from that loss with the Falcons to the Patriots. I mean, he's been such a great coach. They've had so many great teams there. And, Sean Payton used to always say, you just get there enough times and eventually, it's your day. And I think it's going to be that way for the Niners. I think they're a more complete team. And I think they're going to – look, I think the Chiefs had an incredible game plan. They won that game with defense. I mean, people keep talking about Pat Mahomes, but the strength of the Chiefs team this year is their defense, and they run the ball well. They're really not an explosive offense anymore, and he's still able to make timely plays, but he only scored 17 points. They had 4 first downs in the second half. So that game was won by Steve Spagnuolo, a former Saints defensive coordinator, who just had a remarkable game plan for Lamar Jackson. But I don't think it's going to be as easy going against Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy in that offense, and I think the Niners get it done.
You go back and look at Kyle Shanahan, and, man, he's really definitive. I think back about decisions he's made about quarterbacks, who's going to play, who's not going to play, who's traded, who's not. He had a vision of what he wanted to create. And, man, he's really a dogged leader as a head coach, and it would be substantial if he wins this game. I mean, it would just be sort of the icing on the cake for a tough road of building a strong team, building his defense, building an offense, getting his quarterback. The Brock Purdy story, and we've already heard that once, but we're gonna hear it all over again. It's just a hell of a story, isn't it?
Yeah, Brock Purdy reminds me a lot of Drew Brees, a lot of ways. Mobile enough, by time. And look, I think for Saints fans, watch that game because Clint Kubiak and Brian Griese on that offensive staff are 2 of the leading candidates for the offensive coordinator job here. And what I think is funny is a lot of people talk about Shanahan McVay tree, and they act like this is some totally new offensive concept. I mean, it's all the same as what the Saints run under Sean Payton and John Gruden. It's basically the Mike Shanahan, Gruden, Mike Holmgren offense. It's not They put their tweaks on it like everybody does, but it's very similar. So if they were to bring in one of those guys from the Niners, I don't think it's going to be some landmark change in the way the Saints run their offense. Matter of fact, I think that'd be an attractive thing for the Saints because they know bringing in somebody like that, especially Brian Griese, who played under John Gruden, played under him, was basically his biggest influence, bringing him into the building here with what they already have going on offense.
Yeah, the underdog story around Purdy just is fascinating, especially, when you match him up again against Mahomes. Hey, listen, what's interesting is, some murmurings coming out of Saints camp that Jake Haener is not somebody they're going to give up on. There are some people in the building that are still high on him, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've said that all along. They love Jake Haener. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's the backup quarterback this year. They like him that much, and he's a guy that I think people have forgotten about. But that rookie class, I think, is a little bit better than people think, just hasn't got a lot of exposure so far.
Pretty amazing. Then we're all going to get to see all we want to see and hear about Taylor Swift.
I know.
Hey,
look, I think it's fascinating, man.
I'm all in on it, bud.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's great for the NFL. It's great for her. She's getting exposed to an audience that probably weren't Swifties, right? I mean, the NFL fans. Hey, I wouldn't be surprised if she were the Super Bowl halftime show next year in New Orleans.
Hey, listen to me. The documentary about her that's on, I think it's on Amazon Prime. I watched it recently because I wanted to get back in my head about what her road to where she has been. Lord, she's broken every record there is to break. I have a friend of mine. His name is Jake Carter, and his daughters know all about this team. They can tell you anything you want to know about Kansas City, and they would have never cared at all about it. And I'm serious. They really do know who the players are and who their brothers and the families are. They pay attention to this stuff. And you saw a recent analysis said she's worth over $330 million at the NFL just based on going to those games. It is a fascinating story. People are going to get sick of it, but it is really good for the NFL. There's no doubt about it.
Totally agree. Two mega pop cultural forces joining forces. Taylor Swift and the NFL.
Real. The relationship is real. That's what.
I didn't think it was for a long time, but I'm convinced now.
I think it is. Hey, my friend, it's Jeff Duncan from NOLA That Kind of Intense. It's been a pleasure to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, Ricky. We'll talk next week, buddy.
Okay. Hey, when we come back, we're going to talk about the Mississippi Aquarium. We'll see you after this.